Hello. Why, there's a new sheriff in town, and he's got a big old belt. Suffro!
Hakuho!
Roll the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dohyo here on Mr. J-Wag's channel, where the topic is always sumo. We have our reactions and predictions accountability for the September Basho coming up. But first of all, I just wanted to explain that we did not have a second quick strike last week, and I do want to apologize for that. We had a first one, not the second one. Such a tease, I know. As many of you know, I have a job now. I'm still in Utah for one more month, playing the role of Dewey Finn in School of Rock, but what you may not remember is that I am also understudying the role of Fernand Mondego in one of the other shows, The Count of Monte Cristo, and I had to go on last week, so I had to spend most of last week not only keeping up with the Basho, but also learning to fence. So the week was a little busier than I anticipated. I'm sorry about that, but I'm here to give you all the sumo realness right now. So yes, of course, the huge news everyone is talking about right now is that Hakuho has gone in Thai. Oh, all right, there's going to be a whole separate episode where we talk about his legacy, his place in sumo history, my personal feelings, how I'm recovering from this. So keep a lookout for that in the near future. But right now, we got to talk about this September Basho. Got some thoughts. So of course, as we all know, Terunofuji won his 5th tournament, his first at Yokozuna, in his first tournament at Yokozuna, which I believe is only the 5th time that's ever been done in sumo history. So amazing work, Terunofuji, and also, I called it. Now, those of you who've been watching know, I don't normally get too many right in my predictions, but this one I ended up doing very, very well. First of all, I called the Terunofuji Yusho, 13-2, nailed it. I said that we were going to have a Maegashira take the June Yusho, and in fact, we had 2 Maegashira take the June Yusho. Miyogi Ryu and Endo both had 11 wins. I said that this was going to be a tournament where not a lot of people got double-digit wins, and I was right about that. We only had 5 wrestlers get 10+ wins. I mean, other than Terunofuji. And as I predicted, the Sanyaku did not have a great tournament. I was wrong about a few things, but most of the things I was wrong about were really sort of like little things, like I would say 4 people were going to get Kachikoshi, and then like one of them got like a 7 and 8. The story of this tournament seemed to me to be that Terunofuji is finally just claiming that alpha dog throne for himself. We are now officially in the Terunofuji era of dominance. And from here on out, when I make predictions, I'm going to be starting with the idea that if we have a healthy Terunofuji, he's probably going to win the Yusho. The other thing I noticed about this tournament is that this tournament and the last tournament, we have had a lot of wrestlers going 8-7 and 7-8. If you look all the way back to January, we only had 8 wrestlers get 7 or 8 wins in the tournament. Now, in the past 2 tournaments, we had 20 and 17 respectively. And the most interesting thing about that is it was all the way up and down the banzuke. We had a bunch of 7 and 8 win guys at the bottom of the banzuke and a whole bunch up in the Sanyaku. In fact, I did predict we were going to lose 2 Sanyaku members. We're only going to lose 1, Takeyasu. But no one in the Sanyaku, except for Terunofuji, got 10+ wins. The most we had, other than Terunofuji, was Mitakeyumi at 9. Now, if we go back to like high school physics, there's the idea that systems want to find an equilibrium. So what this is telling me is that the 7 and 8 win rikishi are finding their true talent level. We are finding equilibrium in the current banzuke. The transition we've been talking about on this show for at least a year seems to have finally happened, and we seem to know who's going to be residing at what parts of the banzuke for the most part. The main question, of course, going forward, and we'll talk about this a little later in the episode, is what is the true talent level of sumo right now, and who is going to be able to show us something new in the upcoming year and a half. But of course, as always, whenever we finish a tournament, it's time for Uncle Sumo's Attaboys. Of course, Uncle Sumo's Attaboys is that extra little attaboy here at the Dohyo we like to give people who had an amazing tournament. We will start off with Miyogi Ryu. Now, Miyogi Ryu is a guy who, frankly, we don't talk about a lot on the show because he's just sort of a guy who's hung out in mid-Maegashira, dropped down to Juryo for a little bit, but then he came back up. He's been around for a good long while. He has had one of his better tournaments in his career this tournament. He ended up getting 11 wins, something he's only done twice before in Makuuchi. In fact, he hasn't done this since 2014. And he ended up getting his very first Jun Yusho at age almost 35. Now, as you know, during the Quick Strike, I sort of poo-pooed the idea of Miyogi Ryu being able to stick with it through the second weekend, but he did. He ended up having a great tournament, beat both Ozeki. So Miyogi Ryu, great tournament. Attaboy. Now, going forward, I still think Miyogi Ryu's true talent level is going to be around mid-Maegashira. I don't see him hanging out up in the Joy for any extended period of time. If you look back through his career, he hasn't been a Sanyaku regular, since before I started watching sumo. So I do see him sticking around the sort of Maegashira 8 to Maegashira 12 range, and occasionally getting one of these double-digit wins tournaments that pops him up and then keeps his career going for another year or so. Endo came back from injury with another great tournament. So Endo has been having a bit of on-again, off-again injury issues. Now, 2 tournaments ago, Endo got 11 wins, and we're like, Endo's great, why don't we see this all the time? Then he got hurt, and he tumbled down the banzuke, and this time he's back, and he's like, 11 wins, it's amazing. So what I want to know going forward, is Endo going to be a Joy fixture for the rest of his career, or at least up until, say, the end of 2022? Now, for those of you who checked out the who is going to be the next Ozeki epic we ended up putting up earlier in the month, you know that I've been sort of looking at the next sort of year and change, well, year and one Basho now at this point, to see who is going to be the next person who emerges out of Makuuchi to become the next sort of dominant rikishi. But yes, Endo absolutely has the talent for an Ozeki run. I just don't think he's going to have the consistency to be able to put together 3 straight 11-win Basho in a row. Let's see if he can just hang out in the Joy for a couple tournaments and maybe make Komusubi again. Oh no show. Oh yes show. He got 10 wins. Popped back up. I've been trying to figure out what is going to make Oh No Show tick going forward in the future. Is there some sort of predictive value to the recent records he has? Because he's been all over the place. He's had double-digit wins, double-digit losses, and that's just been the past year and a half. It seems to be that Maegashira 2 is his kryptonite. But since he's come back from the injury, Maegashira 2 or higher has basically meant instant Makekoshi. I believe after this tournament, he's going to be right back up in the Joy, either at Maegashira 1 or 2, and we'll see if he can do it this time. He's older, he's not old yet, he's still in his physical prime, but I need to see a little bit more before I'm willing to go back out on a limb again and say that he's going to be up in the Sanyaku. I really hope so. Kirabayama. Now, he did not finish very strong. He won his first 4 or 5, and then sort of tailed off to get a 9 and 6. Now, everything I've been saying about Kirabayama still holds. He's very young, he's very talented, and he's very inconsistent. He's never gotten double-digit wins up in the Joy. In fact, he's only done it once in Makuuchi, and that was way down in the Maegashira teens during his debut. So, if he is going to be moving upward, I think he's going to make Sanyaku in the next tournament. It'll be him or Daisho, but he'll be very close. If he's going to make Sanyaku and be a Sanyaku regular, he's going to have to start getting 9-10 wins up in the Joy pretty regularly. What I was very pleased to see was that he beat the entire Sanyaku except Terunofuji, but everyone else he managed to beat in his first few days. That sort of meat grinder territory the high Maegashira always get thrown into. So if he's showing himself able to meet up and beat up with these guys, that's amazing, but then he can't turn around and lose to 5 Maegashira in the final week. I wonder if what we're going to see with Kirabayama is what we've seen with Daisho, who is our next attaboy. But Daisho, for almost 2 straight years there, my not bold prediction was he's going to get between 7 and 9 wins, because that's pretty much what he got for about a year and a half. Kirabayama might just be hanging out there right now and maybe just needs another year or so to get comfortable with everyone who he's going to be facing in the Joy and Sanyaku. Like I said, it's sort of stratified up now, and I think we're going to see a relatively stable Joy and Sanyaku for the next few tournaments, possibly all the way to the end of 2022. I know I just said it before, but yes, Daisho also gets an attaboy. Now, Daisho has been all over the place the past few years. He used to be so consistent, like I just mentioned. But now he's sort of going all over the place. He's gotten double-digit losses twice in the past 2 years. But Last time he got double-digit losses, a 5 and 10. He then turned right around the next tournament and got a 10 and 5, which is what he did in this tournament. And then, the last time he got a 5 and 10 and then a 10 and 5, he won the Yusho in the next tournament. So, if past his prologue, maybe we'd be looking at Daisho just sort of reaching in there and grabbing another Yusho from Maegashira 1 or Komusubi. I don't find it likely, but hey, it's way more likely than some of the champions we've seen in the past few years. Tokushouryu. With the exception of probably Terunofuji, Daisho on any given day can go in there and beat anyone with his best sumo. The problem is that it's been very inconsistent sumo, and we don't know which Daisho we're going to get from Basho to Basho. I hope that next time he shows up to a Basho, he is utterly focused, his pushing and thrusting is on point, and he makes it up to the Sanyaku and sticks around for a while. Alright, we got some Juryo Attaboys. First of all, Sadeno Umi, Aqua, and Shahozan all look like they have done well enough to get bumped back up from Juryo up into Makuuchi. So for you three, Attaboy, welcome back. Kota Shoho, who I was talking about, this being the tournament where he really needed to show something, because if he had a really bad tournament, he's down in Makushita. He ended up starting good, then dropping down to a 7 and 6, ended strong with a 9 and 6. He's moving upward in the ranks. He got his first Kachikoshi since November last year, so he has, at least for the moment, arrested his slide down the banzuke, and hopefully, with another good tournament, we will see him up in Makuuchi as soon as January or March next year. And another one that I totally nailed on, Abi. Abi is back with a vengeance. He went 13 and 2, and one of those losses was like a hair pull disqualification. Abi straight up dominated Juryo this time out. I honestly think his true talent level is up in the joy, so I think we're going to be seeing Kachikoshi from him, barring any injury, for the next couple tournaments. And a couple quick attaboys for two guys who made their Kachikoshi at a very tough rank for them, Wakataka Kage and Meisei. Meisei got another Kachikoshi. I think this is his 7th or 8th in a row since coming back from Juryo. So, he hasn't been putting up spectacular scores, but he's just been winning, and now he's topped out at Sekiwake. So is this his true ceiling, or can he bust out with a couple double-digit wins in the Sanyaku? Wakataka Kage, 9 and 6, started a little rough, but managed to rally and finish very strong. I think we're going to see him back up in the Sanyaku very soon as well. And we had a few injuries in this tournament, and as always, we hope these injuries are not going to be nagging injuries that end up hindering people for their career. Now, Hoshoryu, I got some angry comments because I did not specifically mention him in my preview video, but I pretty much thought Hoshoryu was going to have like a learning Basho. He was going to get like 6 or 7 wins and get a very gentle demotion, but stay up in the joy. Of course, that did not happen. He ended up going Kyujo for 2 days for tonsillitis. Fortunately, it did not seem like a very advanced case of tonsillitis, anything that would like restrict breathing, keep him out of the ring. He left for 2 days, came back, still got the Makekoshi, only 5 wins, so even if he had won those other 2 matches, still wouldn't have gotten it. But I think this was a great learning experience for Hoshoryu. Hopefully they're going to be very gentle with his demotion because of the Kyujo, but we will see. I would be very surprised if Hoshoryu stays outside the joy for very long. Between Terunofuji and the mid-Maegashira ranks, we seem to have a very solid cadre of wrestlers, and I definitely put Hoshoryu in that sort of next bubble of wrestlers. Just a bubble underneath Terunofuji. Of course, Kotonowaka hurt his knee, possibly re-injured this knee, so we are all hoping that it heals up very quickly and he can come back. Same with Hokuto Fuji. I thought he was going to get a Kachikoshi. He ended up going Kyujo very, very early. So let's hope he can come on back with his high energy style of sumo and continue being sort of like the new Shodai up there at the top of the joy. Yeah, for longtime fans, it's pretty clear now. Hokuto Fuji is the next Shodai. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, check out the app. It's a lot of fun. And Tsurugisho looked to be having some issue with, I think, his right calf. There was talk of some sort of cellulitis. He did not have a great tournament, but I think the retirement of Hakuho, which will now create an extra Makuuchi slot, and for the first time in a while, a Maegashira 18, might keep Tsurugisho just barely in the top division so he can possibly rebound and have a wonderful, wonderful November. So I was talking sort of about like the blob of wrestlers. I think we can now say that there are definite tiers in the Makuuchi division. I think we have Terunofuji at top. Then we have the sort of blob number 1, which mostly is the Sanyaku regulars, and about 5 or 6 guys I think are just going to be hanging out at that Joy Sanyaku line for the next year or so. And for the most part, they're the guys who are there right now. Meisei, Wakataka Kage, Ichi Nojo, Mitake Yumi I think has another couple good years in him. We'll talk about him in a second. Hoshoryu. We've got some younger guys who are showing the ability to hold their own. We're just not seeing anyone who's really bursting out. That's making us say, that person's going like number 5 with a bullet, all the way up to Yokozuna. Or even Ozeki. And that sort of brings us to our current Ozeki. Now, this is one of the ones I got wrong. I thought both Ozeki were going to get around 10 wins. They both got 8, but they both cleared Kataban. We have no Kataban Ozeki for the first time in recent memory. But, although they are not Kataban, they are not thriving right now. And that's why I'm saying I think there's a huge blob that goes from like Maegashira 3 or 4 up to Ozeki, where any one of these people could be the second best wrestler in sumo right now. I mean, who can we say with any amount of confidence is the second best sumo wrestler right now? Terunofuji, clear number 1, but if we look at the past year and a half, it's been about Terunofuji winning a bunch of tournaments. Hakuho, will he be here? And if he is, will he win? Yes. And then we had a bunch of surprises? Tokashoryu, Daisho, Shodai, people no one expected going into the tournament to take the Yusho. And Takakeisho. Takakeisho, one of our youngest Ozeki, still only at the age of 25, still with so much sumo ahead of him, we hope. Not great in this tournament, still coming back from a neck injury. Now, if Takakeisho's neck is hurting, I don't know how he can be at all effective in his brand of sumo. So much of his sumo is just that cannonball style of sumo, and if he can't get full impact, I don't know how he's going to be able to stay up here and thrive. But if he's healthy, I think he's the obvious choice for number 2 right now. Shodai, since his Yusho, really hasn't been showing us a lot of top-level sumo. He's been getting double digits once or twice, but more often than not, he's hanging out near the Kataban line, which is not where you want to be. He's a little bit past his physical prime, and even in his physical prime, was not necessarily the sort of physical specimen who was a dominating rikishi. I'm afraid we have already seen Shodai's best sumo. So that takes us down to one of the younger guys who isn't quite proven, or Mitake Yumi. This is the other weird thing. We now have our top active rikishi has 5 Yusho. Our next 2, Mitake Yumi and Takakeisho, both have 2 championships, and that is right now the second best in active sumo. So, Mitake Yumi got 9. Seems to get between 7 and 9 every tournament. He is right now, I believe, as this past tournament, tied for 8th on the all-time list for most times at Sekiwake in history. And if he stays there for just like 2 more Basho, he'll be up to 5th place on the list. Mitake Yumi is creating an insanely good resume for best Sekiwake, but no one really wants to be best Sekiwake. I still think the next 7 or 8 Basho could give us a Mitake Yumi Ozeki run. I still believe. Okay, one of my favorite video game series of all times is Madden. Now, for those of you who do not live in America, that is John Madden football, and that is American football. John Madden is a very famous coach / announcer, and he made the best football video game of all time. Now, one of the things that makes it so great is that every single NFL player has their stat line. Tells you, oh, this person's this fast, this person's this strong, this person's this agile, this person has this good of a throwing arm, and it gives you a numerical value from 1 to 99, 99 being the best. I've often wondered if we put Madden ratings to sumo, how would they sort of work out that way? Now, I think that Hakuho at his peak would be 99. Greatest of all time. But you can replace that with any dominant Yokozuna who has a case to be put up there, like Chiyonofuji, Taiho, Asashoryu in his prime. Now, a 99 in the NFL would be like Tom Brady in his peak, Marshall Faulk back in his peak, for a little bit back there, but I'm old. I don't see Terunofuji being up there at 99. Now, a couple years ago, when we had 4 Yokozuna, I'd say Hakuho was still probably hanging out around 95. Age had taken away a bit of his speed and a bit of his strength and a bit of his versatility, but he's still winning regularly. Then we had a couple other yokozuna who I think would hang around the 90 area. Guys like Kisano Sato, Kakuryu, Haruma Fuji, maybe at like a 92. Now, Teruno Fuji, I do not see as a guy who's like up at 99 or even like a 94. He's under 30, but there's a lot of miles on that body. And when given the chance in the last tournament against a very aged and injured Hakuho, still could not pull out the victory. So that tells me like Teruno Fuji at his best day is like probably around a 90, which tells me the rest of the banzuke is nowhere near him right now. So like 2 years ago, I'd say Arozeki were probably all 85s or above. Now, Arozeki feels like they're around maybe an 80, but that also feels like a lot of the joy hanging out sort of like at an 80. So you take a guy like Takara Fuji. So at his peak, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he was like an 82, but an 82 didn't matter because you had a whole bunch of yokozuna up at 90s. Now, Takara Fuji maybe is down at like a 75 overall sumo ranking, but because most of the people in the Joy and the Sanyaku are only up at like maybe an 80, 81, 82, Takara Fuji can still get up in the Joy. Takara Fuji still has a career. Guys like Kaisei and Tochi Noshin probably would not be hanging around nearly as long if they were facing the same talent pool they were 2 years ago. Right now in sumo, no one seems to be just anointed as sort of the next big thing. We thought it might be Hoshoryu, we thought it might be Takakeisho, we thought it might be Kota Shoho. It might be, but not recently. No rikishi sort of as currently constituted seems to be able to bust out and dominate. Well, I've given you a lot of my opinions on that topic in the Who Will Be the Next Ozeki series. Check it out. Not a lot of my opinions have changed very much over the last tournament, so I think this means that there's going to be a bunch of Teruno Fuji Yusho over the next year. I think Takakeisho's got 1 or 2 in him, and I really hope Mitakayumi's got 1. But I think we're also going to see some of the younger guys come into their own. Start seeing some first-time Yusho winners next year. And who knows, maybe we're going to see some more fun Tokushoryu surprises. Yogi-Ryu almost pulled it off this time. Now, if you're the gambling type, this is great. The unpredictability is amazing. But personally, I like to see the story of sumo go in a bit more of a linear fashion. I want to see who's going to be the next alpha dog. And is anyone going to rise up to challenge Teruno Fuji's dominance right now in Makuuchi? Because right now, there's only one guy at the top. And he's got a big old belt. Over the next year, for the next 7 to 8 Basho, can someone catch fire for 6 months? Take some Yusho away from Teruno Fuji and Takakeisho. Who do you think that's going to be? Thank you so much for joining us here on the Dohyo. We have a bunch of episodes coming up that I'm sure you're going to love. First of all, we're going to have a Hakuho episode where we sort of try to attempt to put his life and legacy into some form of context. I have read through the entire expert panel recommendations for the traditions of All-Sumo, or whatever the full title of that is. That episode is forthcoming. I have read the whole thing, so you don't have to. Let you know my thoughts. More Shadow of Hakuho will be forthcoming, and finally I can finish the math on it. The only good thing to come out of Hakuho's retirement. I can finally finish up the spreadsheets. All right, everyone stay strong, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo.